Hello there. Welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the Grizzlies versus the Lakers, continuing our first round coverage. So this is a pretty fun series, I think, because out of all the first round series, I feel like this is the one where most people are picking the upset with the Lakers winning this series. So I'm going to get into, obviously, my takes here and get to the breakdown. So let's take a look at the starting lineups. At the point guard position, we have Ja Morant versus D'Angelo Russell. Ja Morant is clearly the better player there. As much as I like D'Lo, I think he's a far better fit with the Lakers than Westbrook, clearly, due to his ability to shoot the ball. But Ja Morant, we all know, is probably a top 3 player at his position when he's healthy. So, yeah, that's not really that close. At the shooting guard positions, Desmond Bane versus Austin Reeves. Again, I think this is a clear advantage for Desmond Bane. He just does everything better than Austin Reeves does. He really reminds me of kind of that Jaylen Brown mold, like a Swiss Army knife kind of do-it-all type of guy. And it's kind of ironic that he was drafted by Boston originally. Small forward position, Dillon Brooks versus LeBron James. Obviously, not even remotely close. LeBron is still a top 5 player in the NBA. And Dillon Brooks, I think, has a lot of people fooled just because, he's a very outspoken type of player. Definitely reminds me of Patrick Beverley, where he's one of those gritty type of players that is very expressive and loud. And I feel like he has definitely become overrated around the league. I watched the video. I want to say it was by Andy Hoops. I could have gotten that wrong, but I want to say it was by Andy Hoops, where he broke down just how bad of an NBA player Dillon Brooks is. So definitely go look that up. But basically what he said, what I remembered in that video was he's good on defense. I think he's definitely been overrated on defense, but he's dreadfully awful on offense. That even the value that he brings on the defensive side of the ball is by far and away outweighed by how awful he is at offense. He's one of the worst offensive players in the NBA when you look at counting stats, his efficiency, and also advanced stats. So I think a lot of people are now starting to realize Dillon Brooks is a little overrated, but definitely going to be fun in this series seeing him guard LeBron. They're probably going to be chirping a lot. At the power forward positions, we have Jaren Jackson Jr. versus Jared Vanderbilt. And if you've listened to my playoff predictions so far, you know that I'm a big fan of Jared Vanderbilt. I always love these versatile type of players, especially on defense, where you can basically switch on to any player. That being said, I gave Jaren Jackson my Defensive Player of the Year award, so I think obviously he wins this matchup. Led the NBA in blocks with 3 blocks per game, which is insane. I mean, there's only a very small few of players who have averaged 3 blocks in a season. So he is one of the best defenders in the league, and I think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year this year. Then the 5 position, we have Xavier Tillman versus Anthony Davis. Of course, AD gets the advantage here. It's a shame that Steven Adams is out for Memphis, because he was actually a very crucial part to their defense, and I think had he been healthy, he would have been an integral part to this series here, because now Anthony Davis, I think, is going to get a lot more easy of looks being guarded. They're probably going to switch him onto Jaren a lot. At least I would if I were them. But if it had been Adams and Jackson, it'd be a lot harder as to now where it's Tillman, where Tillman's good, but obviously he is not a starting caliber player just yet. So I think AD is going to have a lot easier of a time. So let's look at the coaches. We have Darvin Ham versus Taylor Jenkins. I'm going to give the nod here to Taylor Jenkins just because the thing that makes a good coach to me is how you perform as a coach when your stars are out. Obviously, if you have a bunch of good players, it's easy to win, but whenever your star players are out and you're still continuing to win games, I think that just shows really good culture and really good coaching. Last year in particular, I think Ja missed 25-ish games, something like that, and Memphis was 21-4 when Ja was out. And pretty similar this year. They were able to stay relatively afloat during Ja's 8-game suspension this year. Whereas Darvin Ham, I just don't know if I trust him yet. Obviously, he's a first-year head coach. He hasn't really quite proven himself. I think he's definitely done a better job than Frank Vogel did last year. That's for sure. I think the defense is noticeably better. I mean, especially after the trade deadline, the Lakers have been one of the more elite defenses in the entire league. But like I said, I think I trust Jenkins a little more just because he's been around a little longer as a head coach, and I'm just not quite sold fully on Darvin Ham just yet. But he's definitely got to give him a lot of credit for how he's turned around the Lakers defense. He was brought in there as a defensive guy, and he's really gotten control of that side of the ball. Let's look at their records. 51-31 for Memphis as the 2 seed, and the Lakers 43-39 as the 7 seed. Their last 10, Memphis has won 6 out of 10, and the Lakers are 8-2. This is where I think it gets interesting because everyone talks about how good the Lakers have been after the trade deadline, and definitely they have been a much better team. The fit is 1,000 times better. I think had they had this team at the start of the year, they would definitely be a top 4 seed in the West, just given the fit is so much better. And but let's take a look at some of their last games of the season, because I think this is an underlooked point that people don't really talk about, the Lakers. So they beat Minnesota, obviously, in the play-in to get in without Rudy Gobert and Jaden McDaniels, and Anthony Edwards had one of the worst games of his career, and it still went to overtime, so that's not very much of an impressive win. They beat Utah, who's actively trying to tank. They beat Phoenix, who rested KD, Ayton, Chris Paul, and Devin Booker. They lost to the Clippers, who are missing Paul George. They beat the Jazz again. They beat the Rockets, one of the worst teams in the league. They beat the Timberwolves again. That time was at full strength. They beat the Bulls, who missed playoffs, and then they lost to the Bulls. So that last couple of games there is not that impressive to me, and a lot of people are saying, like, it's impressive, this run they've been on to close out the season, but look at those teams I just listed off here. Phoenix without all their players, the Timberwolves dealing with all their drama and injuries, the Rockets, who are atrocious, the Bulls, who are atrocious, and the Jazz. Yeah, I might have said them already, but you get the point. I think that they've beaten up on bad teams. It's what they're supposed to do. And now that they're going to play a 7-game series against an elite team like Memphis, who has a superstar, who has a really good culture and good depth, I just don't know if the Lakers are going to be able to handle that. There's also Anthony Davis's health has to be taken into consideration. Now, some people say, that's unfair, but just looking back at AD's track record, I still, at this point, every time I see Anthony Davis jump, I get nervous because I feel like he's going to come down and hurt his leg or something. He's really made of glass, and although Steven Adams is out, that's still something I'm very much so going to be worrying about for them. Ultimately, though, I'm going with the Memphis Grizzlies to win this series in 6 games. A large part of that, like I said, is because their last run there in the regular season was not impressive to me. They still are obviously building chemistry on the fly here. They've only played like 30 games together, and not even that much with LeBron in the lineup as well. And it feels like basically every night LeBron has to carry the offensive load. And at this point in LeBron's career, I don't think it's very fair to ask him, a 38-year-old, to carry your offensive load. Unless AD definitely is capable of taking over this series. We've seen AD be a monster in the playoffs before. You think back to 2018 in the first round, still with the Pelicans, when he absolutely obliterated the Blazers. And then in the bubble, of course, he was just as important to that title run as LeBron. And so AD is definitely capable of being a really productive postseason player, especially with Steven Adams out. I just don't trust the chemistry just yet. I still think they're trying to figure that out. They don't really have a solidified scorer outside of LeBron and AD. D'Lo has always been a streaky scorer, hot and cold. Austin Reeves, again, a streaky player. Schroeder, again, streaky. So there's not really a reliable guy. It's like, LeBron and AD are going to handle their business. But outside of those two, it really comes down to, who has the hot hand that night. And I just don't think that's a great recipe, especially against a really good team on both sides of the ball with Memphis. So, like I said, I have Memphis in 6. So let me know down in the comments what you think about this series. I think this is definitely going to be one of the most, if not the most fun series of the first round. I think it's going to be pretty competitive, but ultimately I just trust Memphis more. So Let me know down in the comments what you think. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for listening.